السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ما بعد. So we are back in another class of Al-Aqeedah Fillah, and we are still talking about the animals and stuff, about various animals. So let's read. All living beings have the function of breathing in common, although they achieve it in different ways. اتفاق جميع الأحياء في التنفس وإن اختلفت طرائقه. Dr. Yusuf also discusses this topic in his very valuable articles where he says, ويعرض الدكتور يوسف في مقالته وإن في مقالته القيمة لهذا الموضوع أو قيمة فيقول, so he says, the function of breathing which we find in all living creatures from the lowest to the highest is an amazing process. In all cases, it's simply the process of oxidization, that is the union of oxygen with nutrients in the cells of the body, which results in the release of energy which the organism needs, and without which it would not be able to undertake any of its activities. إن عملية التنفس التي نجدها في جميع الكائنات الحية من أدناها إلى أرقاها عملية عجيبة، وهي في جميع الحالات ليست سوى عملية أكسدة أي اتحاد الأكسجين بالمواد الغذائية التي في خلايا الجسم. So it's teaching about oxidization. ونتيجة لهذه الأكسدة oxidization is called أكسدة تنطلق الطاقة اللازمة للكائن الحي التي لولاها لما استطاعوا القيام بأي نشاط من أنشطته المختلفة. Union of oxygen. The oxidization takes place in different ways in different animals, but in all cases the result is the same, the release of energy. تتم هذه الأكسدة في الحيوانات المختلفة بطرق متباينة. Oxidization. ولكن النتيجة في جميع الأحوال في الأحوال الواحدة، وهي انطلاق الطاقة، وفي الوقت نفسه يتكون الماء وثاني أكسيد الكربون نتيجة لهذه العملية. ولهذا فالمظهر الواضح لعملية التنفس هو أخذ أكسجين اللازم الأكسدة المواد الغذائية بإخراج ثاني أكسيد الكربون والماء الناتجين عن هذه العملية. So something happens, release of energy. At the same time, water and carbon dioxide are formed as a result of this process. So the main stages of breathing are, so he's explaining how we breathe. Intake of oxygen needed to oxidize the nutrients and the release of carbon dioxide and water as a result of this process. ففي حيوان بسيط كالأميبا حيث يتكون الجسم من خلية واحدة. In simple animals like amoeba, where the body consists of a single cell, the process of breathing is completed in a very simple manner. تتم عملية التنفس بطريقة غاية في البساطة. إن هذا الحيوان الذي يشبه قطعة دقيقة من الجيلاتين الضخم يعيش في الماء، ويوجد في الماء المحيط به قدر من الأكسجين المذاب. This creature that looks like a piece of soft jelly lives in water. There's a certain amount of diluted oxygen. This oxygen, which is diluted in water, penetrates the amoeba's body, where it oxidizes the nutrients in its body, and the energy is released, which it needs to move and grow and perform other necessary functions of life. حيث يؤكسد المواد الغذائية التي في جسمها فتنطلق الطاقة اللازمة لحركتها ونموها وغيرها من العمليات الضرورية للحياة. Okay. Amoeba. Carbon dioxide and water are formed as a result of this oxidization process in addition to the release of energy. يتكون ثاني أكسيد الكربون. carbon dioxide is called ثاني أكسيد الكربون والماء نتيجة لعملية أكسدة. أكسدة علاوة على انطلاق الطاقة. In addition to the release of energy, انطلاق الطاقة. The amoeba gets rid of the, so this is teaching us, I mean, about the amoeba stuff. And yeah, amoeba gets rid of the excess water in an amazing fashion. It collects the drops of water until they form a bubble filled with water. It then moves to the edge of the creature's body so that then bursts, expelling the water from its body. They start to form a new bubble and so on. وتتخلص الأميبا من الماء الزائد بطريقة تثير الدهشة حيث تجمع تتجمع قطيرات الماء حتى تتكون فجوة مليئة بالماء. فهذه الفجوة تتحرك نحو حافة جسم الحيوان ثم تنفجر ملقية ملقية بالماء خارج الجسم ثم تعود لتتكون من جديد وهكذا. Okay. The carbon dioxide simply passes out from the amoeba's body into the surrounding water. أما ثاني أكسيد الكربون فينفذ من داخل الجسم إلى الماء المحيط به. Breathing in amoeba is like simple way. In insects, the function of breathing takes place through openings in the sides of the insect's body, which lead to a network of fine tubes and get progressively smaller until they reach almost its cells. Oxygen enters the system through the external holes and reaches the cells of the body directly. It's talking about, I think we can skip the Arabic reading. It's all technical stuff. أما في الإنسان وفي عديد من الحيوانات فإن الأكسجين يصل إلى أنسجة الجسم عن طريق الخلايا الدموية الحمراء التي تصبح في الدم، ويوجد بداخل هذه الخلايا الدموية المادة المسمى بالهيموغلوبين. In a man and a number of other animals, the oxygen reaches the tissues of the body through red blood cells, which are carried by the blood and which contain a substance called hemoglobin. One of the amazing features of this substance that binds readily with oxygen and carbon dioxide is also able to detach itself quickly from them. When these red blood cells reach the lungs, they pick up oxygen and travel through the arteries until they reach the small capillaries in the tissues of the body, where they release the oxygen. The oxygen passes through thin walls of capillaries into the tissues, all signs where it is used to oxidize the nutrients. The carbon dioxide results from this process of oxidation, attaches itself to the hemoglobin and is carried back to the lungs, where it detaches itself and is expelled from the body by exhalation. Then more oxygen is picked up and so on. So what happens? What? It binds readily with oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is also detached. So red blood cells reach the lungs. They pick up oxygen. These guys go to the lungs from the air and travel through the arteries until there is a small capillaries in the tissues where they release the oxygen. They go to the capillaries and release the oxygen. Then thin walls of the capillaries into the tissues. So it is used to oxidize the nutrients. So from capillaries to the tissues. And the carbon dioxide results from this process. Then these tissues release carbon dioxide. It's carried back to the lungs. And then we have exhalation. Okay. All right. Breathing happens in different ways in different times, but the result in all cases is the same. That is bringing oxygen to the cells of the body and expelling carbon dioxide. So all this is, an Arabic. We can skip reading, I guess, because this is all scientific stuff. Obviously, this offers definitive proof of two things. First, the precise nature of this process has to be the action and decree of a creator. Let's read this in Arabic. وهذا يدل دلالة قاطعة على شيئين. الأول أن هذا التقرير الدقيق لا بد أن يكون من فعل خالق مدبر مقدر، إذ أنه لا يمكن أن يحدث شيء بطرق مختلفة ليؤدي لنتيجة واحدة عن طريق الصاد مصادفة مصادفة. The first thing, which is there should be a creator. First, the precise nature of this process has to be the action and decree of a creator. Because it could not have happened in any other way. This result, which all creatures have in common, could not have come about by accident. It could not have come about by accident. Musadafa. Musadafa. Accidental. And then the second is والشيء الثاني أن الخالق واحد أحد أن الخالق إذ أن واحد أحد إذ إن أسلوب الخلق مبني على أساس واحد ويؤدي إلى نتيجة واحد لا تتغير. Second principle is there has to be a creator, because breathing is similar, no, in all the creatures. The second is the creator is also absolutely one, for the style of creation is based on one principle and leads to one unchanging result, right? Taking in oxygen and bringing out CO2. Then we have another topic: living beings get their food in different ways. حصول الأحياء على الغذاء بطرق مختلفة. On this topic, Dr. Yusuf tells us all living beings, plants and animals need nourishment. So everyone needs food. The way in which plants get their food is completely different from the way in which animals get theirs. Plants stay in one place and are not able to move around to look for their foods as animals do. So plants are in one place, right? So they can't move around. Animals can move around here, this place. Hence, they manufacture their own food on the spot by using solar energy. So plants manufacture. Animals, on the other hand, find their food ready-made, whether it is plant material or from other animals. The food which animals eat has to be digested and absorbed by the body so it can benefit from it. This process of the process of digestion is very complicated, as it breaks down complex substances into simple substances, which the body is then able to absorb and benefit from. The food substances may be fats, proteins, starches, etc. Each type of food is digested by specific enzymes, which affect it but do not affect other substances which may be present side by side with it. Enzymes which work on fat will not work on proteins, and enzymes which work on proteins will not work on fats. Is it possible that all of this could have come about the result of blind chance, right? Blind chance or accident, or as a result of trial and error? Any mind which is able to think must realize that this is impossible, just as this idea is rejected outright by mathematical laws of probability. The minute amoeba, so I mean, all these enzymes and all this, it cannot come by an accident. The minute amoeba, which is formed of a single cell, takes in food in a strange manner. It extends a pseudopodium. It surrounds a piece of food which is to be found in water surrounding it. The food may be either tiny animal organisms or single cell plants, which are smaller than amoeba. In this case, the food will be moving if it's in a tiny animal organism, and stationary if it is a single cell plant, such as some water mosses. Okay. It is indeed remarkable that a simple creature such as the amoeba, which has no brain or nervous system, is able to distinguish between food that is stationary and food that is moving. If the food is moving animal, the amoeba approaches it with caution from a distance so that it will not run away. So the amoeba is attacking. If the food is stationary and is not moving, the amoeba approaches it without caution, touching it as it surrounds it. Because in this case, the food is not able to escape. How does a simple creature like amoeba, which we can barely see without the aid of a microscope, and which has no brain, nerves, eyes, or sensory organs know this? Once the food has been surrounded by the pseudopodium, it is now inside the amoeba's body, encased in a drop of water. Then the amoeba's body begins to secrete an acidic digestive enzyme, which kills the prey which it has caught if it is still alive. Then it secretes an alkaline enzyme. There's a reason for this. The most important enzyme, which is the one which digests proteins, can only work in an alkaline environment. All this, we are skipping Arabic reading because it just elongates all this science stuff. I don't like science so much. How blood circulates in bodies of all living beings. Dr. Yusuf tells us about the circulation of the blood. Blood circulation takes place in different ways in different parts of the animal's body, such as just as the formation of the heart varies in different kinds of animals, but the result is the same: blood circulation in parts of the body. If you look at how heart and circulatory system is formed in man and a number of other animals, you see that the heart, this is beautiful. This beautifully designed organ is formed of interconnected chambers. So there are chambers in the heart whose openings are equipped with valves. The job of these valves or valves is to allow blood to pass through in one direction and to prevent it going back in the opposite direction. Mm. We find similar valves in the large veins for the similar reason. The network of blood vessels with its arteries, veins, capillaries is designed in an amazing manner. The arteries branch out, getting smaller and smaller until they become capillaries with thin walls. The reason why the capillaries have such thin walls is to allow the gaseous exchange of oxygen from the hemoglobin carried in the red blood cells to the tissues of the body. At the same time, carbon dioxide passes from the tissues into the capillaries where it attaches itself to the red blood cells. Then the capillaries join back together to form veins, which lead back to the lungs, where the red blood cells get rid of the carbon dioxide and pick up more oxygen and so on. With that, just right, I mean, they go to the capillaries and all that. The heart beats rhythmically for a lifetime, whereby some of its chambers expand while others contract to push the pure oxygen-bearing blood through the arteries, while the blood that is passed through the body returns carrying carbon dioxide to send it to the lungs, where it picks up more oxygen and gets rid of the carbon dioxide. There circulate in the bodies of man and some other animal fluids which have specific functions such as blood and lymph. The lymph acts as mediator between the blood and the tissues. Blood has many functions such as delivering nutrients to all parts of the body. If the blood does not exist in the bodies of some animals, such as a liverworm, the bodies of these animals are designed in such a way that nutrients are delivered by some other means. In the bodies and the bodies of a number of other animals, blood is composed of a liquid in which there float huge number of cells which have different forms and functions. These are called red blood cells and white blood cells. The red blood cells, as mentioned above, play a role in the function of breathing. The white blood cells appear in a variety of forms that perform different functions. Some of them serve to swallow and destroy any germs that enter the human's or animal's body. They swallow them in a manner similar to that of amoeba swallowing its food. We breathe in from the air millions of germs of day and night, but we do not get sick every day because these amazing cells which float in our blood and which are able to move from the bloodstream into the tissue in case of any emergency swallow these germs and kill them. So we do not fall ill unless the body's resistance is weakened for some reason, or there are more germs than usual. So all this is about WBC, white blood cells, WBC. The way in which senses are formed in living beings. Dr. Yusuf explains to us that the most animals have sensory organs such as sight, smell, touch, and hearing. The basic format of the eye is similar in all animals and other creatures. Its formation is very complex and amazing. The eye has a lens through which light passes and an opening through which light enters the lens. This opening through which light enters the eye automatically becomes wider in low light and smaller in bright light. The reason for that is clear. When the light is low, the eye needs more light in order to see objects clearly. And when the light is bright, it needs less light. The eye sees things in low light, but man has not been able to invent a camera that can take pictures in such low light. The bee is able to see ultraviolet rays, and the owl is able to see infrared rays, which we are not able to see. These are heat rays which enable the owl to see a mouse in deep darkness. We're seeing these heat rays which are emitted by the mouse's warm body. The rays of light which enter the eye fall on the retina at the back of the eye. The retina is formed of 9 different layers, which are 9 different, okay, which are all together no thicker than a piece of paper. The layer which is at back of the eye is formed of millions of rods and cones arranged in a certain order, which allows them to distinguish colors. The optic nerve transmits this sensation to a specific area of the brain, which translates these sensations to a clear image of what the eye sees. There's so many rods and all that cones, he says. This amazing formation of the lens, rods, and cones and nerves can only have happened at one time. If they're not at all created at the same time, sight would have been impossible. How can it be all these factors complement one another at the same time? The science of mathematics tells us that it is impossible for all these things to happen at one time by chance. A television camera is a primitive imitation of a process of vision which is accomplished by the eye. All the things that the human mind has invented are primitive imitation of what exists in nature. If a simple camera needed so much thought and reasoning to be invented, does it make any sense to say that the eye of a human or any other animal could have been formed by chance? It is truly amazing that for every animal which needs to be able to see, Allah has created eyes with which it can see. Although these eyes may differ greatly from our own in the way they are formed, they still meet the same goal, which is to see. So we find in the earthworm, for example, cells in the skin which are sensitive to light and darkness. This is all that is needed by creatures such as this worm, which lives in tunnels beneath the ground. Insects have eyes which are formed differently from the eyes of humans, monkeys, cows, turtles, and fish. But despite these differences, the insects still see whatever they look at with these eyes. Different types of eyes are fine. The fact that these different means all reach and the same goal is not something that could have come by chance. It has to be the result of a plan aimed at reaching a specific goal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed every creature with senses and understanding according to its needs. The housefly, for example, needs eyes to see food and feels every movement aimed at attacking it. Hence, the creator equipped it with a pair of compound eyes, as he gave to most insects. Each of these compound eyes is composed of hundreds of units which resemble one another and packed close together. Each one of these units sees part of the object that is being viewed, and these partial images combine to give the fly a complete picture. Its creator has also given us another kind of eye called the simple eye. There are three of these simple eyes on the top of the fly's head. Their function is to spot any movement. It is these eyes which make catching the fly almost impossible. Simple eyes. حواس في الأحياء. How the bones and joints are formed. The bones of our bodies and those of a number of other animals can be moved at the joints. Certain muscles contract while others simultaneously expand in harmony, and the hand, leg, finger, or other part of the body moves in the way in which the person animal wants it to move. So you can move it anywhere. The joints are formed in such a way that they are able to slide, so the creature does not feel any friction. The vertebrae of the spinal column are joined in a way that is designed to take pressure and avoid friction. All this about bones and stuff. The spinal column encloses the spinal cord to protect it, just as the skull protects the brain inside it, and nerves extend from the spinal cord through holes in the vertebrae. All these design features have to have happened at the same time, because if even one aspect of this design was lacking, the animal would not be able to move. Does it make sense that suggests that all these features could have happened at the same time as a result of an accident? Obviously not. The reason why blood clots. It is well known that if you are wounded, the blood which comes out of the veins at the site of the wound quickly clots. There's a reason behind this. The congealed blood seals the wounded blood vessels, thus stemming the flow of blood. Seals. If this clotting did not happen, the individual would bleed to death. What it indicates is that a deliberate plan on the part of the creator to protect living beings is the fact that we find it happening in different ways in different creatures. The result in all cases is the same. In most cases, if the insect, as such as a cockroach, for example, is wounded, a number of cells gather and form a seal over the wound so that no blood can come out. In some insects, we find that the blood clots just as our blood does. The fact that the same goal is reached by different means, as we have stated above, offers definitive proof of the existence of a creator who controls and designs things in different ways in order to reach a specific goal for which he keeps the living beings alive. The sensory antennae of mosquitoes. It cannot be accidental that the sensory antennae of the male mosquito have longer hairs than those on the antennae of the female. In the past, it was believed that these longer hairs served as an adornment to make the male attractive to the female. Okay. But then became apparent that these hairs of the antennae of the male mosquito are able to pick up special sounds made by the female from a great distance. These sounds made by the female travel by waves, which to a large extent resemble the waves of a broadcast. The male waves his antennae in different directions, just as we move the antennae for a television not to get a clearer picture. In certain positions, the antennae pick up female sounds clearly, and from the angle of his antennae, he knows instinctively where the female is who is making the sound. So he flies towards her, taking the shortest route in order to mate with her. Thus, we know that the creator has given the mosquitoes this amazing ability to detect the female sound from dozens of meters away, despite the fact that there are many other sounds crowding the airwaves. If this did not happen, the male mosquito would not be able to find the female easily. The mosquito would not be able to survive generation after generation. This is like the broadcast receptor in the mosquito's antennae, which it is used millions of years before man was able to discover the secrets of wireless communication. Is it possible that such a thing could have happened as a result of blind chance? Creatures which flash in the darkness. The females of some species of insects flash in the darkness with a frequency which is distinguishable to the males of the same species, and which they do not confuse with the flashes of other species which are emitted on a different frequency. All right. When the male sees the flashes, which are barely discernible to our eyes, he flies to the female and mating takes place, thus ensuring the continued survival of the species. Mathematics proves that the system of this kind could never be formed by the blind and unreasonable forces of nature. If a system devised by, it is a system devised by a creator who knows that what he's doing and who orders things in the most amazing fashion in order to achieve a common certain goal. Then we have digestive process in animals. We know that it is essential to cut food into small pieces to make it easy to digest. The teeth have different structures and are arranged differently in different animals in order to perform the same function, which is cutting of food. In man, the teeth are arranged in an amazing fashion. We see that man has incisors, canines, molars, arranged in such a fashion that each kind of tooth performs a specific function. Animals do not have any kind of feed that they do not need. Animals which feed on liquids are equipped with special means of sucking up their liquid food and conveying it to the digestive tract. When animals which have teeth chew, the secretion of the salivary glands mix with the food to initiate the digestive process. In the stomach and intestines, as we mentioned above, the animal produces enzymes, each of which work on a certain kind of food and will have no effect on others. Okay. Enzymes. Formation of the embryo. Allah speaks in the Quran also, no? The development of the embryo in any kind of animal is something amazing. The science is also able to describe the stages in this process. It is incapable of explaining nature and the forces which push it towards a specific goal, namely the formation of the embryo of a given animal. This process begins with the joining of the male cell to the female cell to form the fertilized cell. The fertilized cell then begins to divide by an amazing force which resides in it. So the cell becomes 2 cells, then 4 cells, then 8 cells, and so on, until the number of cells reaches a specific limit and it becomes like a hollow ball, the wall of which consists of a single layer of cells. Then half of the ball goes inside, and the other half making 2 layers of the cells on the wall. In most animals, including man, the third layer of cells forms between these 2 layers. The cells continue to divide, and each of these 3 layers develop into specific organs. The outer layer develops into skin and the nervous system and some other parts. The middle layer develops into muscles and bones. The inner layer develops into part of the digestive tract. The cells continue to divide until the fetus is fully formed inside the mother's womb. In mammals or inside the egg, if it is an egg-laying animal, when the fetus is fully formed, the uterus of the mother expels it in the case of mammals, and it breaks the eggs and emerges in the case of animals which lay eggs. So all this Arabic we're skipping, because if you read the Arabic, it'll take us ages to finish this science section, which we don't like. I mean, I don't like much. It's just, I mean, we didn't come here to read about science, but yeah, he has a section, so we'll read it. Just the English, yeah. Formation of the air. No reasonable person should imagine that the formation of the air in the man and a number of other animals could have come about by accident. The ear has a drum which picks up sound waves and vibrates. These vibrations are carried to 3 tiny bones which are arranged in an amazing fashion. The pressure on the both sides of the eardrum should always be equal. For that reason, there's a tube behind the ear which connects to the nasal cavity. The internal part of the ear is connected to a bone which is shaped like a shell. Its function is to analyze noises and distinguish between tones. It also controls the sense of balance. If it were not for this, we would not be able to take even one step without tripping and falling. The sounds then travel via the nerves to the auditory center of the brain so that the person or animal may understand the sounds he hears and distinguish them from one another. Could all this have happened at the same time by chance? The mathematical laws of probability rule that out completely. Filary worms. Amazing things happen to living beings, things that cannot be counted. They point to the existence of a higher power which controls all things and enables living beings to survive. These are things which could not happen by chance, such as the life cycle of the worm which causes a disease called elephantiasis. These worms are called filary worms. In the adult state, these worms sink into the human lymph vessels and lymph glands. They block the lymph glands, causing limbs to swell, especially the calves of one or both of where a person's calf may become as big as that of an elephant. These worms mate while they are inside the human lymph glands, thus producing small worms that move from the lymph vessels to the blood vessels. If these worms stay in human blood vessels, they cannot complete the life cycle. They have to move to the body of certain types of mosquitoes in order to complete the life cycle. Then they become able to infect man. So when the mosquito sucks the blood of an infected person, it also takes in some of these small worms which they grow inside the mosquito's body until they're fully grown. Then they're able to infect a man when the mosquito injects them into his bloodstream while feeding. So they have to go back to your mosquito. The scientists tried to obtain samples of these worms from the blood of people who are infected with this disease, but all the attempts met with failure until something very strange happened. So what happened was one night, one of the scientists was staying up at late at night in the laboratory. He took a blood sample from an infected person, examined it under the microscope, and was amazed to see a huge number of these worms in the sample that he had taken. During the day, he had taken the sample from the same patient and had not seen any trace of the worms. He was very curious to know why the worms were present in the blood sample taken at night when they were not present in the blood sample taken from the same person during the day. It became clear that these tiny worms escape into the internal blood vessels during the day and come back to the blood vessels which are closer to the surface of the skin at night. The reason for this is that the mosquitoes which feed on human blood in these places only come out at night. Hence, the worms move to the blood vessels which are close to the surface of the skin at a time, so that the mosquitoes can suck them up with the blood and they can complete the life cycle inside the mosquito's body. Of course, these worms do not know or understand anything about mosquitoes in whose bodies they complete the life cycle. They do this by instinct. So these guys come to the surface at night, so that they can go to mosquitoes here. But they don't know all this, it's Allah has taught us. There's a higher power which causes them to behave in this manner so that they can survive. It is amazing that in places where the kinds of mosquitoes suck blood are active in the day and not at night, we find that these worms do the opposite. So mosquitoes, when they come in the day, these worms, they come in the daytime, at night. So in night and come to the blood vessels then near the skin during the day. So the mosquitoes in this case are able to suck them up. Could this have happened by chance? Chance. No, no, no. Magnetism of the earth. If we turn aside from the creation of living beings and the mind-boggling wonders and look at this vast universe, we'll find many amazing things. The first of these wonders is the magnetism that exists in the sphere of the earth. This is what keeps us attached to the earth and prevents us from being thrown off into space while the earth rotates. Gravity. The magnetism is different from the magnetism that exists in a bar magnet. We know that a bar magnet is able to attract some things, but not others, such as meat, paper, glass, and all that. But the magnetism of the earth attracts and holds everything, our bodies, glass, sand, water, stones, paper. If the earth did not hold these things, nothing would be left on its surface. The size, dimensions, and orbit of heavenly bodies. Fred Hoyle, professor of astronomy at London University, says in his book, The Nature of the Universe, that there are some heavenly bodies whose size is so astoundingly vast it almost defies imagination, and that in relation to one of these bodies, the earth would look like a grain of sand. The great American scholar Christy Morrison, the former head of the Academy of Science in New York, says the position of the heavenly bodies did not happen merely by chance. They are placed in a calculated manner in space. If the moon, for example, was closer to the earth by a quarter of the distance that separates us from it, the ebb and the flow of the tides would become so strong that all dry land would be flooded at high tide. And as a result, all creatures that live on the dry land would be drowned. If the axis of the earth was not the angle of 23 degrees, this would result in permanent night at the poles. Evaporation from the oceans would lead to the formation of huge ice caps, the pressure of which could cause the earth to bulge. There would be less rain to an extent which would make life on earth impossible. The speed of the earth's revolution would approach 1,000 miles per hour. Even if we were to imagine if spinning at the speed of only 100 miles per hour, this would make both night and day longer, with the result that all plants and animals would burn during the day from the intense heat and freeze at night because of the intense cold. In the voluminous book by Dr. Judd Judd, a professor of philosophy at London University, there's a discussion of different ways the universe and life could have come into being, discussed from a scientific and philosophical point of view. The summary of these discussions is that the universe can only have come into being as a result of an amazing process of creation. Allah says, indeed spoke the truth when he says, "Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq." Will show them a signs in the universe and in their own selves until it becomes manifest to them that this is the truth. And we are done with the scientific stuff. Finally, I thought it'll never get to finish now. This is, inshallah, from this portion, is now we'll go into Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah, understanding, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the texts. Man. So many episodes we've done for Aqeedah Fillah till now, 1920, and out of them, so many of them were 25. We've done 25 till now, and many of them we've done talking about animals and this and that, evidence for the greater Darwin's theory, universal science, from episode 60 to 25 almost. Honeybee and the ants, the termites, hoopoo, the cunning of the fox, humans are like animals, and so on. Now we'll actually talk about the main text, inshallah, in the next class. So see you in the next class. Barakallahu feekum, Jazakallahu khairan, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.